Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. No amount of peril will keep us down. It is the first Wednesday of February, and it is good to be live today. The gruesome twosome taking effect tonight. It is Dominic Guanzon and myself. Joe Viso is out tonight, but we are still keeping the show going. Off week last week. Been a little rocky this year. I'm not going to lie. 2025 been off to a rocky start personally and as far as professionally is concerned in the realm of this show. Definitely has not been ideal in terms of just life happenstance and everything like that. But you know what? I keep thinking to myself too. We started this show back when COVID was raging. There wasn't an excuse for you to be busy. That's what I always said. And now it's at the point now we're like 3.5 years removed from lockdowns and things like that. Life gets in the way. I'm totally receptive to it. I don't pay Dom and Joe enough to continue to peddle their wares on Sleepless.
If you could triple our pay, that'd be great.
You know what's beautiful is whatever multiplies by zero is the same thing. So I don't know shit about math, but I know that much. But no, I greatly appreciate you, Dom. I greatly appreciate Joe, unseen but still loved. It's been a little bit of a rocky start to the year. Now, typically last week we would have done our worst of 2024, which we're still gunning to do, which we're still looking to do probably next Wednesday. Because the one good thing, I will say, ancillary but still, about sort of the hiccups that have happened this year is that there hasn't been anything must-see this year so far. And I mean, there's been very good movies so far this year, and we're only about 5 weeks in. There's been very good movies, but there hasn't been an event movie yet. And we're still looking the next kind of couple of weeks. There's not going to be really an event movie. It's a very, very slow start to the year. There's a lot of new stuff out, but not a lot that's captivating people's attention. There is One of Them Days, the comedy with Keke Palmer and SZA, which I think is probably, as of 5 weeks in, the best movie released so far this year. There is obviously the movie we're talking tonight. There's Companion. There's Dogman. Shout out to my boy Dogman. Shout out to Dave Pilkey. Very fun movie. Very fun movie. As a Captain Underpants fan, I do like Dogman. Catherine was joking with me because I'm a cat guy. And I'm really kind of more of the lukewarm person when it comes to dogs. Catherine was joking with me. She was like, "You don't like dogs, but you love Dogman." And I'm like, "Well, Dogman's only half dog." But I digress. No, that's fun. That's a fun movie, and there's a lot of like random stuff out. I mean, even the movie tonight, if you want to touch on it briefly too, I suggested, I really wanted to discuss this on the show. Saw it last week. Catherine and I did on Monday, Hard Truths. And that was kind of, I messaged you guys that night and I said, this would be a really good conversation on Sleepless, this movie. And you guys hadn't heard of it. You hadn't heard of it, right?
No, I have not.
So we were going to talk that.
Yeah.
And then the bastards, they had to clear the theaters for Dogman, so you couldn't see it.
It's really funny because I had neither heard about Hard Truths. I think I saw like 1 or 2 things on it, but I didn't even know the plot. I wasn't even drawn in. And then I also haven't seen today's movie, which we'll talk about. I haven't heard about tonight's movie until I saw it in like sitting in the theater. And it was like, Jesus, I am all over the place. Going back to, just the fact that January was a kind of a shit show for all of us and for all 3 of us. And it's like, man, January, what a year. The years go by fast, and January was one of them.
Ain't that the damn truth, too? You got me nervous there for a second. I was like, oh, you have not seen Companion, huh? This is going to be a fun show. But yeah, we're gonna review Hard Truths tonight, but again, didn't exited theaters about as quickly as it entered. And the one movie, there's two new releases this weekend that we're gonna see. It's Hard Eyes and Love Hurts. Those are the two that we're gonna see this weekend.
In honor of
What's
Valentine's Day.
also Yes, indeed. What's also going to what's also impacting theaters out here. I don't know if we're gonna get to see it. I hope it lasts another week. It's still kind of TBD, but it's The Brutalist, which is up for a baker's dozen Academy Awards, I think, or something
Wow.
like that. That one though, the reason it's been not low priority, not that, but it's been hard. It's 3 hours and 35 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, and it comes equipped. That's a built-in 15-minute intermission too with that
Really?
movie. Yes. We didn't have our Oscar show this year too, so we didn't get to really discuss it, but The Brutalist is out here finally. But it's an odyssey. It's an odyssey, and I've had friends that have already seen it too that have kind of been a little bit mixed on it. So I'm interested to see that. That's the one with Adrian Brody where he's an immigrant. And it's basically an odyssey of how he sort of comes to America and sort of builds a life. That's the very basic plot of it. But hopefully, though, I know we'll be discussing the Oscars when it happens here in just about a month. But looking forward to discussing Companion nonetheless. Kind of a last minute review on this. But we will segue, if you want to start, we will start into the review here. I want to ask you, Dom, because this is one of those movies that's, I don't want to say ruined, but I want to say greatly hampered by its trailer. So I want to ask you, when kind of the discussion was going on in the group chat about, changing up on a dime with hard truths and everything, going by the wayside for Companion, how much did you know about this? Did you see the trailer? Where were you at when we were going to review this?
Jack shit about this movie. 0%. I was like, okay, Companion. I don't even know who's in it. I know it stars a woman, and that's it. I don't even know the name of the woman, or at least woman per female presenting. I genuinely did not even know the plot. I was like, Companion, okay. And then I think I saw like some blood on a poster. It's like, okay, there's going to be like some kind of bloody killing or something happening. So I knew absolutely nothing. And what a treat it was. What a treat. Because you're right. It absolutely helped. And I'm so glad I knew that twist early on that happens about, a third into the movie.
You didn't know it, or did you know it?
I did.
You did
know
not.
A damn thing at all.
And you are in the minority.
Yes,
you
I
are
would
in the
imagine so.
minority. I would say.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that actively. It's like, I bet you the trailer like spoiled this right away.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the problem I ran into with reviewing this movie on StevePulaski.com. The hard part with reviewing this movie is that, how do I review a movie? This is how I'm going to present it to you, because this is how I grappled with it on Friday night. How do I review a movie that's teaser trailer that came out in November? The teaser trailer, minute and like 20 seconds long, revealed what is posited in the movie as the first major twist. How do I go about reviewing? How do I go about explaining the plot? And that's where I think we need to have like a brief sort of formality right here is, do we reveal it? Because it makes it, I'm not going to lie, it makes it difficult. As somebody who's already written about Companion, it makes it difficult to talk about this movie in sort of that context. But it was also something that was spoiled in all of the marketing paratext for this thing. And that's where like sort of the issue lies. It's not like I don't want to know enough about the plot, or I don't want to know much about it. I don't want to know what happens. It's like, on one hand, you've got the filmmaker here. You've got director Drew Hancock, writer Drew Hancock, who clearly wanted this to be a shock. The way it's set up in the movie, like you could envision Hancock writing this script being like, this is going to be a big reveal. And then you go and watch the first trailer, and fucking Warner spoils it right in the beginning. Now, it's not the only twist. It's not the only twist in the movie, but it's the most pivotal. So what do you think? What do you think we should do? As somebody who is
You're gonna put
a
that
more
shit on me.
more ignorant viewer of this movie than myself.
How many people are watching right now? Like,
To quote my father, close your eyes, tell me what you see.
can
That's
we
how many.
can we try? Like, how do we? Yeah, how do we?
I say we try.
We try. Let's try
I
it.
say we try.
And if we fall flat on our face, then maybe we'll do it.
So I guess, and I don't like doing this, but I just know that writing when I wrote the review for my website, I didn't spoil it. So, kind of going off of my review here, I started with Josh and Iris, who are played by Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher. Sophie Thatcher's having a hell of a last 6 months. She was in Heretic with Hugh Grant
That's
back in
right.
November,
Okay.
which was a sneaky great horror movie from the guys who made the first Quiet Place.
I always enjoy whenever Hugh Grant is playing not Hugh Grant in a movie. It's
He's
really
in his
great.
villain phase now.
He really
And
is, and it's fantastic. I'm all for it because yeah, if you know Hugh Grant's, everyone knows Hugh Grant from those string of '90s movies where he played himself effectively, a very funny
2 Weeks
version of
Notice.
himself, but it is himself.
Yes.
So when he's not doing that, fantastic. It's like he's okay. You're finally coming out. You are a good actor. You are a legit good actor. So yeah,
Unrelated, Catherine and I have been, well, it's her first time watching it. It's my second time, guiltily. We've been watching Sex and the City again from the beginning. And the only reason I bring this up is because you said like Hugh Grant played himself for like the start of his career, and now he's taking on more serious roles. Matthew McConaughey just made a cameo in Sex and the City. And he's playing this braggadocious movie producer who is so infatuated with Carrie Bradshaw's column. That's more of a Jerry Jones impression than Matthew McConaughey. But be that as it may, though, it was like it was like watching that again. It was like, oh, this was back when we thought Matthew McConaughey couldn't act shit.
yeah,
And
that's
it's
true.
like Hugh Grant, like I'm not gonna lie, Oompa Loompa performance in Wonka, phenomenal. But back on the topic of companion, Josh, played by Jack Quaid, and Iris, played by Sophie Thatcher. Essentially, this is one of those movies. I'm just going to warn you. They go out to like the middle of the woods to this estate, and they meet up with some friends. Megan Surrey's one of them, who's like a close friend of Josh. You got Harvey Guillen is in this as well. And basically, they go out for this gathering. They're drinking, they're partying, but like something seems off. Something's just weird. The vibe is weird. Megan Surrey's character tells Iris at one point that like she makes her feel replaceable, which is a little strange. So everybody seems kind of off put by Sophie Thatcher's character Iris, her presence and everything like that. So this property is owned by like a wealthy Russian socialite. His name is Sergei. He's played by Rupert Friend. And he's an integral piece of Josh's plan. There's a plan going. There's a whole reason they're here, and that's kind of where I stop with explaining the plot of this movie, which doesn't give you jack shit. There's basically, a bunch of 20-somethings and this weird woman played by Sophie Thatcher that go out to this woodsy estate and party, but there's a plot involving this Russian socialite. That's kind of where I stop. Is there
Yeah.
anything you'd add to that?
No, honestly, not at all. Just because and I'll say that's part of the charm for this movie is that I kept thinking about how, while also watching the movie, I promise I didn't pay attention, but I kept thinking about like, dang, so much of this twist and turn, because the movie is built in such a way where they expect you to have this as a twist and turn, right? And multiple times with multiple characters. And I think it's very cleverly crafted. It moves very fast. It's a fast moving movie. It's a very isolated movie, which I really much appreciate, because in a movie like this, I kept expecting for a lesser movie to be like, oh yeah, there's also a CEO character played by Jude Law talking about like technology and all that stuff, and it like explores the deep effects of this kind of tech. And it's like, no, none of that. This exists, and now here are the consequences of what's happening with it. We're not getting into a society. Sometimes we don't need to be a societal commentary, which is fine. I do love my societal commentaries. Don't get me wrong. A very face value societal commentaries, surface level. I'm all for that, but sometimes it doesn't need to be that. Sometimes it just needs to be a very interesting plot and a very condensed, isolated movie. I'm not even talking about physically isolated. I'm just talking about like we don't need to see a lot of characters here. We don't need to, go crazy with the background stuff. Damn. I forget what was the budget on this movie because it feels. I'm not gonna say it feels cheap.
$10 million.
$10 million. That's actually really effing cheap. That's really effing cheap for a movie. For a wide release movie, right? Was this on wide release? It had to have been if it's
Yes,
by
it
me.
was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good on them, because this is, dude. Let's focus on surface level, and then we'll go on to like not surface level, but you know what I mean. Before we get into the business side of things, just the fact that it's a tight movie. This is a tight, cleverly written, and fun ass movie because in so many ways, this because it relies on its twists. You could make a compare and contrast to like a lesser M. Night Shyamalan movie, and you'll look at that and go, yeah, this would have the way it handles those twists and turns would have been lesser. But the fact that it goes so breezily towards its natural conclusion means that it is it feels tight as a result of that. Am I speaking too vaguely here?
No, I think
Okay.
that one of this movie's big perks is that it's tight. It doesn't waste time. It's very economical.
Yeah.
With its pacing, sort of with its reveals too. I think that absolutely plays into it, plays into its appeal, and plays into its sort of like captivation. I mean, think about it too. Like, this is a movie. When the first teaser dropped and I saw it, I believe Joe sent it to the group chat. And I watched it because one of the draws of this movie, one of the reasons that this movie got a lot of eyeballs on it initially was that it was produced by Zach Kreger. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
that name doesn't ring any bells, Zach Kreger, uh, externally speaking, was a major component of the comedy troupe The Whitest Kids You Know from IFC. But he also more recently was the writer director behind Barbarian. So, and that vaulted him. It was kind of like a Get Out effect with Zach Kreger. Was that after Barbarian came out, made all sorts of money on the last week of August in 2022. Nobody had any expectations for it. It was a brilliantly written movie. He became like the most desired director, writer out of Hollywood, too, to the point that Warner Brothers gave him a like $10 million deal for his next movie. It's called Weapons. It comes out next year. And they gave him like final cut privileges, they all sorts of perks. So Zach Kreger, like from the producer or from the mind that brought you Barbarian or however this movie was marketed, Companion, Zach Kreger's attachment to this thing sort of sent it into the ether. It's kind of like like Candyman. A lot of people, I think, the latest Candyman still think that Jordan Peele made that movie based on the marketing
Yeah.
that was done by it. You know what I mean? Because it was like from the guy who brought you Get Out. Well, it's like, well, that's a half truth.
Same with Monkey Man.
Monkey
Honestly,
Man was the same thing. Yeah, because Dev
less
Patel's not a
so than
name.
Candyman, because I didn't. No one even knows the name of the Candyman director. But in terms of
Nia DaCosta.
yeah, exactly. But at least because Dev Patel, he also starred in it. At least he had that advantage, and also some name recognition.
Yeah, but
it,
Nia DaCosta got like erased from
yeah,
that Candyman
100%.
reboot. She really did. But Kreger's involvement immediately made this like noteworthy. But going back to my original point though, is that like this is a movie too. The way it was marketed initially was definitely a horror movie because the teaser trailer is you said you were ignorant, you didn't see. The teaser trailer was the dinner scene with the hand over the candle.
Yeah.
That was the teaser trailer.
Okay.
And it was sort of the reveal of like, who is this woman? That's how the teaser trailer was presented. And this movie juggles a lot of genres very well. I mean, it's it's a mystery. Like I thought it was watching that trailer and the subsequent one. I thought it was going to definitely be more of a horror movie, but it's definitely like a mystery, a comedy, a romance, a horror movie, a thriller. Like there's a lot here in a very short runtime. It's only I think 97 minutes long. There's a lot here in a very short runtime that is handled, I think, very effectively and very entertainingly.
Yeah, the cast here is fantastic. It really is, and everyone serves their purpose very well. Honestly, Rupert Friend is like, what the hell is going on with this guy? It was such a ridiculous like character, Russian character, and I'm like, oh, so he's like, is it going to be revealed that he's like Serbian and he's pretending to be Russian or something like that? It's like, no, he's Russian. He's supposed to be Russian in the movie because it's such a over the top haircut, facial hair, and accent. But that's a very minor pet peeve. Not even, it's so too funny to be a pet peeve. But honestly, I gotta give praise to Harvey Guillen.
Gian.
Thank you, Harvey Guillen, who plays a hilarious character, and he is of the couples that were invited to this retreat. He is one half of one of those couples, and he plays. He's kind of shitty, but he's also very likable and funny at the same time. Because his true morals come out in the end, and it's like, okay, whatever, it is what it is. But he shoots a gun at one point, and he shoots a gun just so blasé and like matter of factly, like bang, oh, what the fuck, ow, that hurt, and it's so like I actually laughed out loud.
Do you remember the most recent trilogy of Spider-Man, Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home?
Yes, I think. Oh wait, you know what? I don't think I ever saw the middle movie, so I saw the first.
Okay.
And third
Do you
movie.
remember the character Ned, Peter Parker's best friend?
Yeah, but this isn't him, right?
No, it's not him.
Yeah.
I was saying that early into the movie, I whispered to Catherine. I said we have Jacob Batalon at home. No, it's not Jacob Batalon. He was in last year's shitty movie Caro. But I was just saying, like, that's who he reminded me of, facially and also just like comic relief effect.
Yeah. Oh no, he was in Blue Beetle. That's what it was. He was in Blue Beetle for a hot second. And Puss in Boots. Okay. No, I give shout out to him because he was a very funny comic relief who actually did something. And so again, just owing to the cleverness of the script, I very much appreciated it.
Yeah, well said there too. I mean, this is like going back to what you said, this being a tight movie. There's 10 actors in this movie. There's 11 credits here. The one is actually Drew Hancock's wife is the voice of the vehicle.
Okay.
which I always think is cool. I love looking at that shit. I love just Googling like if there's like especially with these like movies like Afraid and like these AI movies in a way. I like Googling and looking like who did the voice. You know what I mean? Like who it is. And yeah, it's Drew Hancock's wife. Who'd have thunk? Anyway, did you see, and you're not a horror movie guy, I doubt you saw this one. I know we've brought it up on the show before too, because we talked the most recent Scream sequels. Did you ever see the movie Ready or Not?
Ready or Not?
With Samara Weaving?
I don't think so. No, I didn't. No.
The reason I bring it up is because it's like this movie companion is a lot like Ready or Not. That's the movie that most came to mind watching this movie. And
was Ready or Not good?
I thoroughly enjoyed Ready or Not.
Okay, shit. Maybe I need to watch Ready or Not.
I've seen it twice. I've thoroughly enjoyed that movie. The thing about that movie, though, that's fascinating, is that you could have seen this movie in like the 80s being made. Mm-hmm. I'm talking Ready or Not.
Yeah.
You could have seen that movie being made in the 80s in a way that was very kind of not narrow-minded, but like basically Ready or Not is a woman who thinks she's going to get married to the love of her life, and then his family turns out to be fucking psychopaths.
Sure.
And
that I can tell
a quest
from
for survival. That is the Cliff Notes, the bare basic cocktail napkin synopsis of Ready or Not. What I'm getting at, though, is that with Ready or Not, the thing about that movie though, one of the great joys of that movie is to watch Samara Weaving, the lead character in that movie, her like consciousness grows. She goes from being this like bride to be
Hmm.
to like this victim to then like as slowly as time goes on with this movie, the way she reacts to situations, she becomes like stronger
Yeah.
and more mature, and like she fights for herself and she's not gonna take it. Like it's fun to watch her character evolve.
Hmm.
And that's what made me think of this movie Companion, because you see that a lot with Sophie Thatcher, who's really the crown jewel of the movie.
Yeah.
You watch in a lot of the same ways her character grow and evolve. And I mean, in this movie, it's a totally different situation as to why she does. But she becomes like smarter. She starts to outsmart the people that are using her as a pawn. And I think that's one of Companion's greatest delights. Besides being well acted, besides being tight, and besides being well paced, I think this is a movie that really, we talk about pacing a lot in the movie, which is one of those things that's like, it's like editing. If it's bad, if it's
Hmm.
a poorly edited movie, you feel right away. But if a movie's edited really well, you don't really notice it.
Exactly.
This is one of those cases. I think a movie's edited extremely well
Hmm.
and is paced extremely well, and it allows you to kind of watch that maturation process of Sophie Thatcher's Iris character.
Yeah, everyone thinks that, oh, like Scott Pilgrim, that's like amazing editing because all the transitions are really clever. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Scott Pilgrim and it is clever editing, but that's not the case. Yes, as you said, you don't feel it's all a feeling. I've said this multiple times in multiple reviews where it's
It
like
is.
it is something you don't consciously know, but you absolutely feel. You can say that with any art, right? You look at a Picasso and you have a completely ignorant on art, yeah, you can't explain why it makes you feel something, but it makes you feel something, right? And that's really what a lot of this is that this companion, I'm pretty confident, is going to get seemingly dismissed as like a murder mystery or like some kind of sci-fi comedy-esque, dark comedy-esque thing. But when you sit down and watch it, you won't realize what kind of that you're in for a good treat until you're about like halfway through the movie. Honestly, like even like the opening, I was like, on, right? It seemed like okay, it's trying to put itself out there. It's very much a fantasy dream opening to a good degree, or a very stylized, not stylized, but yeah, fantasy esque opening, not in the Tolkien sense, but just in the dreamy sense. And it's like, okay, sure, this monologuing characters, whatever. You got like a meet cute going on here. But then where it goes with that, it becomes like that meet cute becomes a very concerted thing in the world as to why it was done that way. And it's like, okay, this you this is pretty smart. It's a pretty smart little movie. And sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah, and again, we don't want to reveal anything or like, spoiler or anything like that, but like going back to the opening scene that's in a grocery store. And something's a little weird from the beginning. Now, you had no idea of the main twist that's revealed within the first half an hour. You didn't know that going into it, you
Mm-hmm.
personally. So like I knew it. Catherine knew it. We,
Yeah.
we saw it together. Like the grocery store scene.
Mm-hmm.
And she's walking through the aisles, and the grocery store is like weirdly barren.
Yeah.
It's quiet. You know what I mean? Like it's just weirdly quiet. And then Jack Quaid knocks over these oranges, and there's like nobody rushing over, or nobody like gawking or
Mm.
anything like that. It's one of those things, and this is like
I,
this is
I
where I go
I
back.
chalked that up. I chalked that up to like bad filmmaking at first, where it's like, oh, this doesn't feel alive. This is, or is this like some kind of
Right.
fantasy dream thing? But no, it pulls the rug on you in that way.
See if I ever make a movie, I'd love to do a scene like that where then like 30 minutes later, people are like, I'm like, yeah, fuckers. Yeah, see, you thought the Polak, you thought he was a dumb Polak. He ain't dumb Polak. But anyway, no, you could definitely tell in that like instance, as somebody who knew the twist going into it, the major twist. like you could tell that this was supposed, and this is why I'm fucking pissed off at Warner Brothers, as great as they've been to me. Like it was such a great twist, and it was going to build into something like a really big reveal. And then, like, to have that ruin, though, it doesn't ruin the movie. It really doesn't ruin the movie.
No.
Because there's another twist on top of it with another character that you really don't see coming. And the fact that I think it's a testament to just great plotting that it doesn't ruin it. But it's like, it does feel like the air is sucked out of that first 30 minutes of the movie because of the fact that the marketing campaign for this could not resist themselves in revealing to market this movie with one of its most crucial plot developments.
Yeah. What's that study that was done decades ago where it's like, yeah, it's been found that like spoilers don't really, overall doesn't really affect people's enjoyment of said movie, or even just like art, just whatever, like book, TV, whatever. Especially when they use like movies that were very heavy on sort of like Star Wars, where it's like I am your father, and stuff like that. So it's not that surprising, but it is nice to have, right? It is nice to have that extra layer of, oh, okay.
There's nothing like gasping when watching a movie.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to say. There's nothing like gasping or being in like a sudden state of shock. Because you know what? That tells you two things. Number one, the movie revealed something you were completely unexpecting, or you completely not expecting. Number two, the other thing is that you were captivated by that movie enough to care. That's the other component of it.
That's right.
There's been a lot of movies that I've watched that have tried to, pull the okie doke on you in the third act, and it falls flat, or it's like, okay, this was the reveal. It's one of the reasons I think M. Night Shyamalan's later output, I think it's kind of become I think he's starting to slowly get away from it between Knock at the Cabin and Trap. I think he's slowly trying to migrate away from it, because every time we see an M. Night movie, we're like, okay, Jagoff, what's the twist? What's the get here? Like, I'm waiting to get got. What's the get? And then at the end, and then when the credits roll, and it's like the last two movies he did, there really wasn't a big twist. It was like, you Jagoff, you screwed me over here. You know what? So I think he's like slowly starting to get away from that because he's become known for it. So like in just this instant, I think Companion is like a curious case of a movie that's like, its significant plot development was revealed in the marketing of this movie. And ultimately, I do think it cuts a little bit into sort of the surprise factor of the whole thing.
Yeah. It's just a fun little movie. We'll go to commercial or intermission very soon, but I just want to say that, well, I guess I should save this for later, but I'll say it anyway again, in that it's a fun movie. It's a pleasant surprise. Overall, it's a pleasant surprise in and of itself.
It's hard to find a review of this movie that doesn't use the F word, fun, and I think that's what Dom is getting at. We're going to come back from our Zoom-sponsored intermission and give our final thoughts on Companion, and then it's a little belated, but still worthy no less. I don't think it's ever a bad time to talk about the late, great David Lynch. And because of our erratic show schedule and because of our Best Films of 2024 show 2 weeks ago, we had not got the opportunity to talk about David Lynch, so we're going to take that opportunity after we conclude our review of Companion here in just a few minutes. We come to you live and in living color. It is Sleepless with Steve on this Wednesday evening. We'll be back in about 60 to 90 seconds on Sleepless with Steve. Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. We come to you live and in living color, for better or for worse, every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time. Good to be with you today. We are talking Companion, kind of wrapping up Companion here. Because while this movie, I would say, like, doesn't leave you with a ton to talk about. I do, especially if you're not trying to spoil it, like me and
Mm.
my co-host Dominic Guanzon are so valiantly trying to do. You're welcome. Um, I think this movie really is a testament to plotting and to concept. Like, this is something Drew Hancock clearly thought about and sort of like fussed over. You can tell that from just the way the movie's paced, just the way the movie is sort of uh constructed. This is a very well-paced movie, extremely well acted. And I want to say it too. We didn't talk about it on the show. We didn't talk that movie on the show, but and I know a lot of people have seen her in the show Yellow Jackets, which I have not seen. So I'm ignorant to probably her most famous role. But as far as I'm concerned, Sophie Thatcher's arrived.
Mm.
Sophie Thatcher is a tremendous young actress who has kind of like contemporary scream queen written all over her for the last
That's the
couple of
vibe I
movies.
got immediately without even knowing that much about her before.
I could definitely, don't want to compare too much, but like it's kind of the same feeling I got when I saw Thoroughbreds with Anya Taylor-Joy. It's kind of the same feeling because I remember that summer or that spring. Anya Taylor-Joy was like in 3 movies in the span of like 7 months.
Mm.
And it was like they were all different roles. And I remember thinking like, okay, this is one of those like, you know, stars that's going to, if nothing else, at worst, is going to be a really reliable star for genre movies.
Mm.
And that's how I feel with Sophie Thatcher. And I think that she does a tremendous job here, through and through. And I don't want to sleep either. I almost give him less credit just by virtue of his asshole character. But Jack Quaid
Jack Quaid
is
is
really
awesome in
good
this.
here. Is really good.
He's so sweet until he's not.
That's a perfect way to put it. He's the perfect, like, well-meaning nice guy until he's not. He's really strong here, Jack Quaid. And so don't sleep on him either. But between him and Sophie Thatcher, like it really, especially in the last 20, 30 minutes, it becomes Sophie Thatcher's movie.
Yeah.
And I think that Hancock found his perfect muse in Sophie Thatcher to bring this concept to life, at the same time give him credit for making a movie that's got romance, it's got thriller edge, it's got horror, it's got comedy, intrigue, it's got like a tech panic side to it, which I think is very real in this day and age. So using that as my closing thoughts, it's a 3 out of 4 star movie for me. What do you say, Dom?
Yeah, I think I am truly oscillating between 3 and 3.5, just because it was such a pleasant surprise. Very emphasis, put a lot of work on the word pleasant there. And you know what? I'll say 3.5 out of 4, just because when I think about how all the ways this could have been handled, this surprise could have, trailer aside, I never judge it based on its trailer, right? But within the movie itself, the ways they could have handled the twist, the way they could have been overbearing with with its world and technology. No, you get straight down to business, get straight to the world, or not straight to the world, straight to the plot, and hone in on maximize that time that we have for doing cool and clever and kind of cutesy, but also funny, but also dark, really dark things. There's a lot of fridge horror in this film, fridge horror being that thing where you're, if you're familiar with that term, it's,
Yes.
after you read something or watch something and then it's like, huh, okay. And then later on when you're opening your fridge and you're looking at something in your fridge, you realize, oh my God, it was this all along, or like the implications of this are terrifying. You're thinking about something later, right? And it's one of my favorite terms. And this has
It's
a
a
good
great
degree
term.
of that. This has a good degree of not even fridge horror, but just like kind of fridge thoughts, I guess. Yeah, man, I'll give 3.5 out of 4 stars. Credit where credit is due, just because something like this has been handled so generically, so boringly, or even just outright poorly. I had a lot of fun with it.
Can I give you? I'm really glad you enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Really glad. I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't think it would at least lead to a good
And it
conversation.
helped. It really helped. The surprise thing aside, that certainly helped. But the fact that I initially thought this is going to be boring looking because I didn't look anything. I was like those opening like 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, this seems seemingly quite boring, but no, totally on my top of my head for that one.
I wonder how long it would have taken you to latch onto Hard Truths then, because Hard Truths is one of those real slow burn. Like you're almost like you're like I feel like I'm watching a movie comprised, and this is like after the fact with Hard Truths. I'm like watching a movie comprised of all the bits and all the scenes that I would have thought would have gotten cut out of the movie.
But see, that sounds
Like,
interesting to me. That the way you describe it is interesting. If the acting, I mean, look, it's a drama, right? So it sounds like
yes,
maybe the acting would have been a little more acting, and that's neither a good thing
it's
or a
true.
bad thing. I'm neutral on that term. Whereas Companion was, I'm not going to say they were subtle about it all, right? But it's more understated, and which some of its parts very much is what you want.
Very well said. Can I real
How many more
quick tell you?
generic metaphors can we use for this film without saying shit?
Well, I'll get hyper specific here. You brought up the term fridge horror.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna attach it to another
Ooh.
very effective term that I learned in college. Shout out to North Central College. You know what was one of my first, probably not my first, but at least like pertaining to this term, moments of fridge horror. And I know, and you are a much smarter, more I don't know what the word is for it, like I guess tied in person than me, like as far as like culture is concerned,
Sometimes.
lifestyle is concerned. Okay, you want to know what my moment of fridge horror was? When I
Yeah.
was told what the term like hostile architecture was.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then I went walking in like Chicago with my dad to a Cub game, and I was like, "Oh, that's why there's fucking spikes on the benches." Oh, that's why this like railing is leaning. Okay. Like,
That's
you
funny.
know, hostile architecture. That was a moment of fridge horror.
Yeah.
Now anytime I go to Chicago or a big
It's
city and I
everywhere.
see
It's really depressing.
it is. Anytime I see like a marble bench that's like contorted, I'm just like, oh, hostile architecture. I'll be dipped in dog shit. Anyway, um,
What the fuck? Dipped
that's a
in dog
bad.
shit.
I've been saying that way too much. That's a bad Santa line. Anyway, we have not gotten to touch on this on the show for the last couple of weeks, and it happened just shy of a month ago, about a little 2 weeks shy of a month. January 15th, sad day in cinema. We didn't get to touch on it because our immediate show after that was our best of 2024, and that is a loaded show to say the very least. David Lynch passed away. Great filmmaker. You know you're great, or you know you're impactful. I'm going to say that. You know you're impactful when your last name becomes an adjective, Lynchian, Kubrickian. Like, you know your last name. When your last name becomes an adjective, you've become impactful. And Lynchian has absolutely been a term when describing movies that are, for lack of a better term, weird, surrealist, experimental, non-linear. And David Lynch, widely considered to be one of the greatest filmmakers of our generation, of all time, rather, passed away. He was 78 years old. And when the news broke, I remember thinking, because he had emphysema. He was diagnosed with emphysema a year prior. Lifelong smoker. Winners never quit. I respect it. 78 years old is a good age. I remember thinking, it doesn't. I don't think the location of where he died has come out yet. I don't think. But the first thing I thought of were those California fires.
Yeah.
Like that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, well, he had emphysema, and those fires certainly didn't help if he was living in California. And I wonder if that's what did him in. Ultimately, you don't know. What matters though is that we lost one of the most unapologetically original filmmakers of all time. David Lynch was Tremendous, and it's funny. I feel unqualified in some ways speaking on David Lynch, or at least memorializing him in some way, because I'm curious. I don't know if you have. Have you watched Twin Peaks at all?
I've watched a little Twin Peaks, but that is something
That's
I need to really sit down and watch because of upon that first episode, I'm like, okay, all right, this is something I was not prepared for, and I think I need to come back around when I'm prepared for it.
That's me. You've seen more Twin Peaks than I have. I've seen a handful of his movies. He did not have as many movies as you might think. He's not one of those directors, and I always say one of the worst things. It's more for music than I think it's for filmmakers. But I do think with filmmakers, especially like Martin Scorsese, who's made like 40 movies, Woody Allen, who's made 50, there is an intimidation factor. It's like with music artists, like. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan, and I call myself a big Bruce Springsteen fan, and I've only listened to maybe 7 or 8 of his albums. Bob Dylan, that's another one where it's like it feels so intimidating to tackle that discography. With David Lynch, you've got about 10 movies. You've got about 8 to 10 movies that I think would give you like the perfect, not including Twin Peaks, that would give you the perfect kind of picture as to who he was. So I think his filmography, as dense as though each individual movie you could write a fucking dissertation on. But I don't think his filmography is as dense or as intimidating as some other filmmakers. But just to go down the line here, Eraserhead was his directorial debut. A movie I would like to revisit because I was not particularly in love with it when I watched it about 7 years ago. But then there's movies like the Elephant Man that I loved, Blue Velvet, which was terrific, Mulholland Drive. There's a lot of his movies that I really loved. The one I have not watched that I would love to watch is it's called The Straight Story. Have you heard of it?
No.
This movie is now it's commonly regarded as one of Lynch's more mainstream movies. Like one of his movies that kind of evades a lot of the weirdness and stuff. First off, it was released under Disney. It's a Walt Disney movie. It's Walt Disney Presents The Straight Story. And essentially it's about this World War II veteran who lives with his daughter, and it's PG. And essentially like his brother, I think, has a stroke and he's on like life support. Again, I have not seen this movie. But essentially, though, he wants to visit his brother, but he doesn't have a driver's license. This man doesn't have a driver's license. So he takes his fucking tractor to visit him across the country.
Okay. Okay.
And it's sort of like I reading about it years ago, I remember, and I never did watch it, disappointingly. It was more of I think Lynch described it as like his ode to flyover country, because Lynch grew up in Montana, of all places. And it was like, because this movie's shot like I think over the Great Plains and then like the Midwest. So it incorporates both of like flyover country, it avoids the coasts. And it was like he said that he wanted to make a movie about the middle of the country and the people in the middle of the United States.
Well, yeah, a dude just driving around in his tractor for non-tractor business is that sounds very much like it, don't it?
It almost sounds like on one hand it sounds kind of like, on one hand, it sounds like a movie you would make if you have no conception to the Midwest, or the Great Plains, but also at the same time, it's like it's pretty like the motivation factor of when like people in the Midwest want to do something and will do it.
That is one of my favorite like styles of movies or what have you, where it's like, yes, this whole movie is dedicated to this culture, this group of people, etc. But the people making the movie have no idea, don't really have a good idea of what that means. And that can be very problematic, don't get me wrong. In that sense, I enjoy it on a morbid sense, or a very, like watching a disaster in real time kind of sense, right? But right. I think my favorite film of that stripe, tangent away from Lynch here, but I think my favorite movie of that stripe is Saturday Night Fever. Did you know this? the John Travolta
Yeah, I
disco
know you
movie.
love that movie.
Yeah, great movie. It's based off of, I forget the magazine, but based off an article off a magazine. But the writer of that article, the author of that article, later revealed, yeah, so I was assigned. He's English. He's a British guy. And I was like, yeah, I went to New York City in the 70s, and I was assigned to write about the discotheque culture. But the truth is, I didn't really do that. I didn't really know where I was going or saw what I was doing. So I made most of it up, and I based a lot of the characters off like the mod scene back in England. And so, but funny enough, he captured it kind of perfectly because and people are like, yeah, that's what disco was like back then. The griminess, the rough and tough nature of New York City, bro. He didn't do shit. He didn't know what he was doing. And so it's, every now and then you come across something where, yeah, they didn't know what they were doing, but they nail it perfectly, because so long as they have that style to it, they capture that imagination. That's kind of the transformative nature of art, isn't it? And I guess you could say that a lot about trying to tie it back to Lynch. That you could say he just does that a lot too, with things like, I can't speak authoritatively, but it seems like with Twin Peaks, right? He's trying to capture that then this mystery. I can't even speak authoritatively on it just because it's such a trip that even the one episode, I'm like, okay. This is a thing. Look, the only Lynch product that I've properly seen front to back is Dune. Is his take on Dune.
Okay.
Which arguably, or what I've heard, is that that's like one of his worst. But take it as you will. I don't know. I think it's fascinating. David Lynch's Dune, it kind of goes back to how you will about. Because with the Denis Villeneuve Dune, right? Pretty objectively, the more successful Dune, we'll say that. But in terms of its artistic style, right? How do you go about judging these two works? There are objective ways to go about it, and I think objectively, the Villeneuve, the more modern ones are better. But man, there's a charm, even at its worst, seemingly worst. I don't know. Lynch still has something about him that I couldn't turn away from that movie. It's a mess of a movie, but my God, I was kind of entranced by it. Yeah.
No, it's a messy movie. It really is, Dune. But at the same time, I think what the appeal of that movie was, and I saw that movie before Denis Villeneuve's, kind of just judging it on its own terms, with no connection to the Dune series. But the thing, and this was after I'd watched Eraserhead, The Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, so I had a good handle on
Mulholland Drive. That's the first one on the list is Mulholland Drive for me.
Mulholland Drive is great. Mulholland Drive is really great. But what I think is really captivating about his Dune movie, though, even for as flawed as it is, because the flaw of that movie is the plot. It's incoherent. And it's also, it goes to the debate of like studio control versus directorial control and stuff. You could tell there was a lot of fighting, and Lynch was pretty public in that. Lynch wanted to disown the movie. But what was kept in that movie, though, was the grotesqueness of David Lynch. And that was the thing about him that was really profound, was that like he made this movie Dune based off one of the most wildly successful sci-fi franchises ever created. But he was still able, despite all this kind of studio interference, to like keep these characters as fuck ugly as they were, like intact, all the makeup and everything. Somebody said, I think it was Sean Fennessy, a film critic I've latched onto recently with The Ringer. Sean Fennessy said he's like, with The Substance getting like 6 or 7 Oscar nominations, he said like there's like David Lynch is rolling over in his grave and David Cronenberg's rolling over in his grave. Like, where the fuck was the Academy when I was making these disgusting movies with social commentary? Like, where was the Academy giving me my flowers when I made these movies? And it's true. David Lynch, too, I'll add this, just because this was one of my favorite movies of 2017. He didn't direct it. It was directed by John Carroll Lynch, who was in the movie The Founder, about Ray Kroc, the McDonald's movie. It was a movie called Lucky in 2017. It was Harry Dean Stanton's last movie.
Mm.
And David Lynch, it's actually now I think David Lynch's last actor role. And the whole movie is basically about a 90-year-old man who like comes to terms with his own mortality. It's a very funny movie. It's a very funny movie. Got some poignant moments of drama, but he's like 90 years old. He realizes he's gonna die. He's been smoking since he was 8 years old, and like he just sort of like starts to appreciate the ironies of life, and it's one of those movies. And David Lynch plays one of Lucky, who's Harry Dean Stanton,
Hmm.
plays one of Stanton's friends in the movie who loses his tortoise, his pet tortoise.
Oh.
And they're at the bar, and David Lynch, who's like so fucking natural in the whole movie, like Lucky's like, how do you lose a tortoise? Aren't they slower than shit? How do you lose a tortoise? And it's like, why should I care about a goddamn tortoise? And then David Lynch is like, a tortoise is an amazing creature, Lucky. They are as noble as a king and as kind-hearted as a grandmother. If you had any heart, you would realize this. And like, it's such a beautiful performance because like Lynch kind of like opens his eyes as he's trying to like find the meaning of life in his last few days. Like he's such an integral supporting character in this movie. And it's weird because like I when he died, I think of like Elephant Man, which is probably my favorite of his directorial movies, Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, but I also think of Lucky because I just think he's such an integral part of that movie.
Hmm. Yeah.
Highly
Uh,
recommend that one.
he David Lynch is just someone I've heard about so much, and just someone I've never really gotten around to it. So you don't realize what you got until it's gone. So I can't. I I got so much shit to do. I got so much shit to do and so much shit to watch. But I think Mulholland Drive. I'm gonna hone in and target Mulholland Drive wherever that's streaming, assuming it's streaming somewhere, right? So yeah, man. I follow. Let me say, I follow a lot of the queer community on Blue Sky,
Yes.
and they freaking love David Lynch.
Oh, he's got a fan base. You'd
Yeah.
have to rent Mulholland Drive, just an FYI, on YouTube Voodoo. It's not
Oh yeah.
streaming anywhere.
Oh sure.
Now they know they can make money off of it. Just an
Hmm.
FYI. That's the problem now too. Is now they
Oh,
know
I
that
mean,
like
they got me. I'm falling right for it. So.
Lynch's interest has peaked at this point. But I wanted to give at least a little bit of time to David Lynch as somebody who is so integral with movies and so integral with like weird cinema because at the end of the day if I could just end on one point is that as somebody who in high school was a member of Mubi, MUBI.com, and got introduced to like Stan Brakhage and French New Wave, Jean-Luc Godard, and a lot of weird experimentalist cinema from all different countries, everywhere from France to Iran to Germany. I know my love for movies like Clerks and Dogman probably don't really, express that too much. But as somebody who loves experimentalist cinema,
Hmm.
especially experimentalist shorts and surrealist shorts, um, I love that David Lynch found a way, and this is not easy, found a way to capture the weird, the ugly, the broken, the societal outcasts in such a grotesque manner, but also make it so human and so relatable and so fascinating and rich and topical and obviously standing the test of time. Because I'm not gonna lie, when he died a couple of weeks ago and seeing the outpouring of support, like major news networks, I remember watching the Iowa News Channel out here did like a 5 minute thing about him. I'm like, man, like I even in that moment I realized I'm like I kind of underestimated like how far reaching and successful he was at bringing this sort of weirdness into the mainstream and sort of like shifting the center of acceptability and like
Hmm.
transgressiveness into the public sphere. And I think for that alone, if his movies were just style and no substance, it would be noteworthy for him to have done that and still retain the impact that he has. I think his movies will stand the test of time, and for that I'm eminently grateful.
Yeah. I know what'll test it. I know one thing that I absolutely know will stand the test of time with David Lynch is that effing haircut, dude. Holy shit. Dude had a style about him. Dude photographed so well.
He
God
did.
damn.
He did. He did. Wikipedia's got a photo of him from the '90s, and some bitch is dapper.
Yeah,
Just
man.
a dapper individual too. Even there was a photo of him I remember seeing for his one of his obituaries on New York Times or something from like 2022. He didn't look bad, and he was sick. Like, you know what I mean? Like some of us age like wine, some of us age like milk. That's what I always say. But at any rate, that's Sleepless with Steve. We're going to try to do our worst of 2024 show next week with the three of us. Um, and the longer we go without doing it, the more pent up anger I'll have for these movies because I need to kind of vomit it out
Yeah.
on Sleepless, and then I'm officially done with the previous year's sins, and then I move forward. So I want to thank you, Dom, too, not only for being present but also just hosting the show,
Yeah.
too, because I know it's a lot of work on your end, and I appreciate you
A lot of
doing.
work on Joe, so appreciate you, man. Wherever you
Yeah,
are. Well, we know exactly where he is, but we won't say. But yeah, man.
yeah, no, I greatly appreciate it. This was a fun show, really good topic, and I'm glad it loaned to a great review and a little great sort of in memoriam segment for David Lynch. We'll be back next week, optimistically speaking, with our worst films of 2024, and then we can parlay into 2025, the year of Dogman, which I am hopeful that we will discuss here on Sleepless with Steve. Until then, until next Wednesday, same time, same place, 6:30 Central Time, where we come to you live and in living color on YouTube each and every single week. For Dominic Guanzon, the unseen but still love Joe Viso, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with